Well, good evening, folks. Welcome to another episode of Australian Reptile Q&A on a lovely Sunday night coming from Melbourne, Australia. We've got a very well-known guest on tonight that I'm sure everybody's familiar with, Mr. Joe Ball, bluetonguelizard.com.au. And without any further ado, let's get him into the chat. Good evening, Joe. How are you going, mate?
Yeah, good.
Well, this is a very ambitious stream that we're running here. I think we're going to 7 or 8 pages. There's a few from your page coming in. Oh, there's a lot of there's a lot of. You can usually see who's got the popular page by the amount of viewers straight off the bat. So there's about 30 people from your page already watching. So welcome everybody. Let me just put the. I'll get you. I'll let you know. I am at the start of the shows. I'm a little bit of a chatterbox, and then I'll slow down and get the nerves down. At least the sound seems to be working all right, and the video stream seems to be going okay.
Yeah, and I've just had my MBN installed to get me from a change from a mouse on a wheel internet to something a little bit more 2021. So hopefully this works a little bit better.
It seems
rural Queensland being rural Queensland, of course.
Okay, so there's a lot of people watching. So let's. I just wanted to see I just want to put the chat on. So I'll bring the chat in here, and then we'll see if we know any of the names here. Chris Fry. Good evening. Well, we're not starting quite yet. We'll let it populate a little bit before we start going head into the technical stuff. As I said to you before, there's been a few shows already with your history, and pretty much the majority of people know sort of your background in the Australian hobby. And I think of all the reptile breeders, I think that there's only I don't think there's any that can say that they made such an inroad into the Skincoides group as a whole, when it comes to the reptile, the blue tongue mutations, so I think it's important that we sort of delve into some of the stuff that that you don't get, the stuff that you don't normally, you don't always get to talk about it because people find out about your background.
And that's it. We've done these group things, but I wanted to try and get into some stuff that you can't really just put in a post. This is stuff that would be on the page of a book or, just stuff that's just a little bit next level, and see if we can break that down in a couple of hour session and get a few of the guys that are interested in reptile genetics as a whole to see if they can learn something or take something away from what my experiences in blue tongues.
Well, I think that looks okay like that. I don't know. You tell me what you think. We can put you on the top. I can go on the bottom. I don't mind. But the comments should start popping up there. So there's people. There's a lot of people. I'll read through some of the names. You might know the names. Thomas.
I know most of these names. Yeah.
So it should be popping up on the right.
And we'll answer Gary's question straight away. When are you writing a book, mate? Look, I've been writing that for a few years, and look, the problem with something like that is you have to be honest with yourself. And if you're going to write something that, when you need to cover a broad topic, you have to accept that certain components of it you just don't know that much about. Like I can cover blue tongue genetics and my experiences, but then you have to go, and then I can do some husbandry, but then you need to get a vet on board, and you need to get somebody that's worked with some of the other species on board, and then you need to get a publisher on board, and then it's what you call it. You call it the complete blue tongue, and then there's Indonesian blue tongues as well, which we can't keep those down here. So, that's something that's in the pipes, but and I'm collaborating with a few people on that. It's part way along the way, but it's a big beast when it's something like a blue tongue. It's not as easy as doing the same as doing a book that's solely contained within Australia. It's Anyway, it's on the way.
I mean, and you'd want to do it properly to do it justice if you do something like that. I mean,
Yeah,
it's not something that comes around every year. You know, if you're working on something, it'd be a 5 to 10 year process, and by the time that you've brought it all together, there'll be a new stack of information that needs to be
of
added.
course. And
You
like I
know?
said, it has to be a collaboration. You can't turn around and say, I know it all, I'm going to write a book. Because that's just not the way it is. I know components of certain things, and that doesn't stack up. Needs this and that and this, you know. Yeah,
Let me
yeah,
just, Joe. I just want to see how far behind. Okay, so it looks like we missed a few at the start, but this is sort of up to date. I think I'm going to leave it like that because that gives us a little bit of a. It's a direct link, and you can also see that chat overlay, can't you?
yeah,
Okay, so let me just see if there's anybody else here. So there's a few people. There's a lot of people watching tonight. They're very popular when it comes to the blue tongue stuff. Like I said to you, I tried the blue tongues. They smell.
and
Every time we have a laugh about that, it's like I just
we can touch on that. Danny Gorman did just say, what did he say? How many volumes are you thinking will it ever get done? Yes, it will get done. Will it cover everything? No, it won't. But it'll have a fair crack. And will it need something else writing afterwards? Yes, it will. Will I write that? I don't know because I don't like writing. So, but I will do something, and it's on the way. Yeah,
you should, but you should, there is software that can do dictation, so you could literally just put a headset on your head with a mic and just talk into a thing, and it literally
yeah,
write the book for you, and then you just have to. But that's too hard. When you're in Queensland, there's sunshine, there's reptiles. You know, why would you want to sit with a bloody book writing a book? You know.
yeah. That's right. But it's on the way. Yeah.
Oh, there's lots of questions coming in. So I think what we wanted to do tonight was we just wanted to. We'll just jump in because otherwise
Just
we'll
say
be
hello
sitting.
to Emma there as well, because that's an old pommy friend.
All right. So if
Yeah.
reptile non-bear, people just want to see your face. We already discussed how nice you look under the light that you've got there. You know, it's a good stream. You can see the internet's working right tonight. There's no crackling and pixelation. Keeps me happy. You know. So you'll call it the complete blue tongue.
You sort of can't. That's the problem with it, because then you got to bring in all the Indo stuff, and I don't want to do that. You
And
know, I want it to be Australian. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean it is one of the few things that the Aussies lead the way.
Mm.
You guys that work with the blue tongues here literally lead the way in the world when it comes to blue tongue mutations. You know, every other country can say that they've got the ball pythons and the reticulated pythons and the bearded dragons and stuff like that. Aussies, blue tongue mutations are pretty much unique to the Australian reptile.
Yeah, and your carpets are basically mirrored, aren't they? Carpets are
Yeah,
sort of 50-50, because you've
yeah.
got a lot of mutations and a lot of work being done here and a lot of work being done overseas. But when it comes to blueies, it ain't even close. You know, it really isn't. So, yeah.
Okay, so let's have a look. And I'll have to take this chat overlays, but I'll have the chat open here on the side. We might have to touch on that later on. What did we say? We wanted to try this. No, let's do it this way rather. Let me just get the first caption up. So what we'll do, we've got different topics that we'll put on the screen, and then we'll explore that. I'll have a look at the chat on the side here to see if there's any relevance. So guys, if you want to ask Joe questions about
I'll
blue
take that
tongue.
question there, which is what gives blue tongues the pigment to actually turn their tongues blue.
Okay.
I don't exactly know, but I do know that albinism makes the tongues pink. So the pigment in the tongue must fall under the melanin range. Otherwise, albinism or amelanism, which I think it's probably more accurate in reptiles, it wouldn't take that away. So it's melanin that makes that blue.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen some of the mutations. Oh, some of the mutations that you've worked with, you've actually made animals that have just a straight pink tongue. You know, I mean, from carving out the layers of pigment. Which
Yeah,
of the mutations you've got the is it the patchwork that has parts of the
yeah,
body?
yeah. That's right, and that's a melanin inhibitor too. That's stripping out patches of the melanin, which is, that's why I call it patchwork, because it falls short of pied, and I wanted to give it that kind of feel, but I didn't want to make that statement because I wasn't happy with the term pied for it. And that's the same. It pulls out melanin and leaves all of them with a pink tongue. That's the only other mutation that does that. All the other mutations, you've still got a blue tongue.
But the majority of ones where you take and all the albinism, where we know that the melanin gets taken out, all of them have pink tongues, don't they?
Yes, every single. There is some anomalies in the albinism range that fall closer to the T plus spectrum within the T negative.
All right.
Blue tongues do have some blue through the tongue, but that's anomaly stuff. And if you get caught up in too many anomalies, you never move on. Yeah.
So let's start. So I'll start the topic officially. So what we'll do is I'll be editing this video afterwards as well to cut out the different topics into 5 different short videos. So you don't. So if you can't watch the whole thing from the start to the end, later in the week.
I do still use party globes. Yes, Tony Rogers said that. Yeah.
So what I'm going to do?
We've got a bit of purple back here. It's not a party globe.
You've got the purple there. Yes, I noticed that earlier. But that's ambient light. Ambient.
Party globes are really good in a room where you've got a high ambient temperature because it enables soft increase, especially in a room where you've got green tree pythons or, say, Varanus prasinus or anything tropical, when you've got an ambience of 23, 24, and you just want to pick it up to 27, 28, party globes to go. Yeah.
So let's avoid. I'll monitor the questions on the side here, Joe. Let's start with this first question. The topic number 1 for tonight is the progress of the Skincoides group. We know so far. In Australia. I think I'll leave you to run us into that, and we'll touch on that. And if anybody, please if people want to ask questions, make them relevant to what we're discussing. So to keep the flow, a good flow going with the conversation. So if there's anything you need to ask about the current state of Skincoides, Joe will give us a bit of a rundown of what he's doing and how far it's come so far. He's done some great work this last season. He's had some 4 or 5. How many genetics have you got now in visuals, Joe?
Yeah, well, I suppose that's where I take over and stop roll with it. We could look back and look at all the single gene stuff. Look, that's come to death. Everybody that's watching this that has an interest in blue tongue should have a basic knowledge of the initial mutations that hit the scene. We're dead set on quadruple genetics now. Yeah. That's albinism, hypermelanism, xanthic or anery, whatever you want to call it, and white northern. That's all mixed up, and it's all in the pot. And there are quite a few litters that I've been producing that have every single one of those mutations right there visible to look at. And I think Maynice has got some photos to kick us off. I don't know what order I gave those with you, but I think I started on quad genetics. Yeah, that's it. I wanted to just get straight into quad genetics because this has gone further, and it will go a lot further.
So I've got you can see the pointer there.
This is one litter. These are from one mother here. Yes, there was a few wild types in there too, but these are 2-3 hour old animals. You can see by the irregular shaped bodies that they've basically literally just taken their first feed, that sort of afterbirth thing that they swallow, and you spray them with water so they have a little drink from the side of the tub and so on. And what you've got there, you can clearly see that all 4 of those genetics are right there looking at you. Yeah. You've got hypermelanism. Well, that's in the top left corner. You've got a larva there. Obviously, that's albino, and it's hypermel, so that's 2 covered. You've got an albino there. That obviously that's the same as those 3. Then here you've got a platinum, so that's hypermel it's also white northern, so that's your third gene in there, and then there you've got a triple expression. So you've got
so just tell me which one to point to. Which one's the platinum? The one there where the little pointer is?
Yes, that's that. Yeah, that's it. With your arrow on now, that's the platinum. So that's white northern hypermale. That was, and then there you've got a Mercury below it. So that's the platinum with black eyes. So just in those 5 animals there, it's phenotypically 110% conclusive that you've got all 4 genes there.
Yep.
You know, and that's, you know, we're going to look at labeling and stuff later. You know, I hear people talk about quad genetics. You know, that's what's in a quad genetic litter, not one mutation, pos this, pos that, pos the other. Pos means nothing. That's what you want to see, you know, like that's a quadruple genetic litter. Right there.
Just for the ones for the younger ones or the newer reptile keepers that are watching, how many years, a culmination of how many years work would that litter encompass right there?
I suppose it's taken me 10 years to do that. It's not just your own work, you know, I'll openly admit it. I used an animal from my old adversary to help me along the way. And that's important when you're trying to further things. You know, you have to look outside the square. You have to use unrelated animals. You have to use animals that, you know, you have to encompass what everybody's doing out there and bring it together to enable that stuff to stand up. Yeah.
Let me just see if there's.
There was a second photo of that too, but
all right. Well, we can have a look at that. That's fine. I just
and
so that's
nice just and you see there, that was another one in the litter. There's an anery there, so that's probably a better. You know, you can see
anery down at the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and it just gives you. It just clearly shows everything that you should be seeing. By the time you're getting four genes in the litter, you're almost struggling to produce a wild type, because the chances of there being a wild type in there is
lower and lower.
It gets lower and lower because you're trying to dodge mutations as opposed to dodging the wild types, you know.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it is, because the parents are wild types, you generally get healthier, stronger animals, but they're producing full litters of visuals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's somebody asked a question here, but it's not quite related to what we're just talking about now. What's your thoughts on monitor lizards? Somebody asked you, Danny Gorman.
Yeah, I can see that. I can read it here, and I'll answer that. Look, it transfers to any animal in the animal kingdom. I mean, I've also started working with birds, and their glossary, if you like, or their terminology, when you break it down, it's exactly the same as ours, and it's the same with monitors. Monitors, we just need the animals. You know, we've got all these fantastic varanid species, but where are the mutations?
It does feel like there's certain species that are very resilient against mutations. You know, some, like I said to you before, you know, you live in carpet python territory where you are. Yeah. And I'm always amazed to how few new mutations, like the majority of the carpet mutations that we know of, all originated overseas in European, more inbred collections, you know. And I always find it fascinating that there's not more of that stuff popping up in wild. So there must be some form of genetic resilience against.
Yeah, and I'm not qualified to answer that like yourself, man. I think it's just one of those things. What you can't see, you can't really answer the question on. And I suppose that falls under the, you know, with the monitors, you know, we've got half a dozen species of large varanids here, and yet we haven't seen an albino in any of them, whether it's a water monitor, you know, Mertens right through to a parenti. And you know, that they exist in the Asian water monitor, but why don't we have an albino parenti or an albino lace monitor. The laces, they're everywhere if you ever get out west, even Queensland or anywhere, southwest, anywhere inland. It's, there's laces everywhere. Why no albino? And once that happens, then the answer to Danny's question is yes. Of course it's transferable.
Ati said geography and the ability to travel may play a part. Yeah, I agree. Like there's factors involved with the mutations occurring in a population. So it might just be that it's the genetic diversity is that great that it's it's a population's not inbred enough.
It's preventing the related breedings. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So,
whereas skinks are very, they're a closer population, maybe. Yeah.
James says,
and I was thinking of that that's why I did say the larger monitors, James. There is an albino in the scalaris, and I think there's what they label as a leucistic, whether it's leucistic or not, in the species escapes me now. You remember that?
King Orum, Varanus
Varanus kingorum, yeah. So
I think a long tail monitor.
Yeah, that's right. There's a leucistic and that one-off albino that James is talking about there. So must be in them. Must be that. Yeah.
So are you happy with where the skincoides? So we're still talking we're still discussing that first topic. Are you happy with the progress of the skincoides in the hobby? You seem to be trailblazing the head. Is there any are there other breeders that are having the same sort of success with multi-gene?
It's starting to happen now. I think it's fairly common knowledge that some of the early stuff fell down a little bit. I was always open to share how the early snake ranch albinos performed, which was, I was fortunate enough to be in a position to buy a solid number of them to make an early success with them. But then, I got a line, I use the word line, but I got an outcross of albinos into the hobby, which works primarily, but then all those were inbred.
Yeah.
And some of that starts to fall down again. And now more outbreedings have been done and so on and so on. They're an animal that's very relative to the new blood that you put in them. They don't stand up quite like a carpet does to all the inbreeding. You think of Simon Stone's Blondie line, Darwin's, they're still being inbred to this day, and they're fine. A blue tongue, you can pick up mutations, but you have to be a discernible breeder if you're going to do it. You got to have an outbreeding plan. But yeah, but they get better year on year is the answer to that, Maynese. And they get better year on year for those who are willing to put the work in.
Is there any breeders still working with pure Eastern blue tongues? Because I know, was it Mark Shipley up in New South Wales who was working with the Easterns? Were they were pure Eastern?
That was all stuff I sent Mark Shipley a while ago too. That was a pure Eastern outcross, and I eventually dropped that outcross because I was mixing it to all the other mutations. I haven't heard from Mark for 12 months, but yeah, he does, I believe, still have some pure stuff. I've got a couple of pure of each of the mutations here too. It just is held back ultimately because people want the new colours, Odd people want pure stuff, but
here's a good question. Can you please explain what an outbreeding means?
I use the term outbreeding because a lot of people will happily go, I've created a new line. And it's a difficult one to cover because an outbreeding is when you get an existing line and you pair it to something unrelated. So you're outbreeding the original line. You're not actually creating a new line. You're just outbreeding and adding new blood to it. So, and that, in essence, will give you some extra vigor or add extra heterozygosity to those animals.
And it seems to
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and it seems to make the animals, the outcross, the progeny of outcrossing, a lot more robust, and it seems to fix a lot of the issues. And that's only sometimes. A lot of the times, there's just issues that can't be fixed with outcrossing, but in the majority of times, you can sort of, if it does help invigorate the line or invigorate a certain mutation.
Some people may remember the vet that helped me with a lot of my videos, and he used the term, and this, if you understand this terminology, this sums it up best for me. When you outbreed, you increase heterozygosity, and when you inbreed, you increase homozygosity. And if you understand what those two words mean, it's there in a nutshell. Heterozygosity means that you're basically dispersing any nasty homozygous traits, whereas when you're increasing homozygosity, you're bringing all the nasty homozygous traits back in, and it will inevitably funnel your projects into smaller, weaker animals, which is the same whether it's in birds, snakes, anything that you enter a breeding program on.
So I think I'll dive a little bit deeper into that. So in any type of any trait depends on, it could be technical. I'm going to try and dumb it down, but
I know what you're trying to say. It's hard to cover, and you have a crack at it. Yeah.
So traits appear in like the alleles that make the alleles. I don't think we could. I don't think there's an easy way to do it. But for things to go wrong, it needs to be in a pair, in an animal.
It's two copies. It's two copies without going down the codom trait. The codom thing covers it best. Every trait generally needs two copies to present itself. And same in a recessive trait. It does need two copies. Okay, the first trait, it isn't visual, but you need two copies of that trait. And that's the same for anything often, whether it's a small set of lungs or a lot of things that can be detrimental to the animal. So when you're increasing heterozygosity, you're increasing the one copy status of all these traits. I don't mean to cut you off. It's
no, that's fine. I was struggling then. So
that's something. It's something that's hard to. I understand it in my head, but it's hard to put it into layman's terms.
So a good reptile breeder would aim to breed still get the traits that he wants to visually have in an animal, but he also aim to get less of the traits that could cause issues.
And a good way to look at it is always try to avoid breeding brother-sister. Yeah. So if you've got an animal that you want to outbreed, say you've got an albino male, for instance, it would be good to put that albino male over two unrelated females. So then the progeny of those two unrelated females will carry albinism. But then if the progeny of those are paired together, you're then mating cousins as opposed to brother-sister.
Yeah.
And hence leaving behind quite a few of detrimental traits, but always taking the albinism with you. And that in a nutshell is the way you need to approach it. You need to always be pairing unrelated animals.
I guess the problem is though with the type of stuff that we've looked at just before. The more genetics you put into these animals, the harder it also gets to sort of get that separation between brother and sister, because inevitably you'll have to make those pairings unless you do a lot of outcross, unless you make a lot of different.
And that's the key. That's definitely the key. Once you've got all these traits, you then have all the mutations are all unrelated to one another. So you're actually creating yourself the segue to be able to do it. So, for instance, if I want to get one of my quadruple genetic animals and then I want to add T plus to that, why don't I get that animal and put it to 2 T pluses from different litters?
Yeah.
So that I can make quintuple genetic animals, but all the babies from the separate litters are unrelated. So then I can put those back to one another, and then you move. You're able to add that extra gene, and that's the thought process that I've learned to use. I can't say that I've always had that thought process because that would be inaccurate.
But I guess it's also harder when you're starting with, say, a possible. I see a lot of guys buy. I'm sure you've also in your time. A lot of people buy possible heads, and they start with groups of related animals, and then if they're working with all head stuff, it's very hard. I think it makes it harder for them to actually do the outcrossing because they're striving to get that.
Yeah,
One visual.
You've got to get some color or some visual animals before you can do some outcrossing. So, you can't really outcross from hets. So you've got to create a good, strong visual animal and then outcross from there.
Yeah.
It's a can of worms, and it's understandable why it's hard to comprehend.
Yeah, hang on. It sounds like somebody's cooking something in the kitchen next door, and it's just grinding my ears here. Sorry, Joe.
No, that's all right. I'll give you a second.
All right, so that's
So let's get back into some of those photos, and we'll have a look at some of the quads.
Yeah, let's have a look. So this was a nice photo that you posted during the week.
I'll get to that Danny's question in a second. So these are some of the things that come out of that quad genetics. Everybody likes a bit of eye candy,
Yeah.
And there we've got your platinum there on the left with that's visual white northern visual hypermel, and then you've got a Mercury on the right. And there, that's conclusive evidence that these animals are viable, in my opinion. Anybody that knows blue tongues, you look at those, you can see the shape of the head, the length of the body, the length of the tail. They're strong animals once you get them to that stage. They're 3-month, 4-month-old animals, and that's showing you that stacking the genetics does work. Doesn't work in every animal, but they're strong progeny from these projects.
So do you think that the magic ingredient was the northern blue tongue originally in the early days? Was that the magic, the silver bullet that nailed these mutations?
Definitely, but I do see issues with northern blue tongues too. Like I have some pure northern mutations and their litter sizes, and there's issues with some of those guys. But once you get that, it's an old term, I don't like using it. It's almost a bit of hybrid vigor. You get the best of both worlds. You get the best of the Syncoides world crossed with the Syncoides intermedia world, and that seems to give, in a nutshell, something that seems to work.
But that would fall back onto the topic we just discussed before. That would lead to a lot more heterozygosity into those first animals that you started with would have had a ton of heterozygosity in the genetics then.
Yeah, that's right. And then you go and add northern to it, and they're a totally different geographic race of the same species. So you have to move forward when you do that.
But their body structure, everything is bigger, more robust. Have you found their biology adapt? Are they more tolerant to heat? I mean, I think we've spoken about.
To me, here in Southeast Queensland, they're perfect.
Yeah,
and that figures because I'm successful with them. If they weren't perfect, I wouldn't be sitting here discussing them because it wouldn't be working, They don't work everywhere, but they do work here, and they do work in a geographic range not too far north and not too far south from here. And that sort of eastern mix for New South Wales, Queensland does seem to work. Once it gets down to you guys down in Vic, there's guys of you down there that have had success, but it's a bit more of a challenge. And I think that's where you probably need to mix some of your Vic Easterns into it to take it in your own direction, you know?
Is Danny asked something here as well. I don't know if you saw this or if we've asked it.
Yeah, I did. No, that's a good question. I'll show you some of that in a bit. Danny, I've got a T plus mixing with a T negative.
So you just tell me when you want to go back into the photos, Joe, and we'll jump back.
Yeah, keep going on them. I do need to just duck to the toilet quickly too. So.
That's all right. That's all right. I'll get people to throw their questions down there while you go.
Here's another one out of the quads that wasn't seen. This is only a double visual. That's your hypermel with your black-eyed anery.
Lots of.
I think that's something else. I really do. You know, you're starting to really get that black-white contrast, which, to me, the ultimate mutation reptile. It is black-white contrast. You know, you're working towards what you see in some of the American mutations, that that panda look, or the cow, or whatever. That, I know that's not there, but that's the first opening of the door. You can see white and black scales, and you can see them totally sort of individual to one another.
Yeah. If you want to go, if you quickly want to run to the loo, I'll hold the fort.
Keep going on to the next one. I'll just and that shows the effect of that genetics there. You know, like that. There, this is Justin Cook. This is an animal I sold to Justin Cook. That's your classic hypermel that not only produces black pigment in large quantities, but also produces tons of orange, which is why your larvas are so orange. But you know, your blackout in that previous photo shows what happens when you pull the orange out. You know, so that's you know, that's the world of visual hypermels there. You know, you've got with or without orange. Yeah, I just got to the toilet.
Yeah, that's right. So for those of you that have just tuned in now, let me just get rid of Joe's screen there. We'll bring him back in once he comes back. So for those of you that have just tuned in now, if you need to ask a question, just add it in the comments there. Hello, there's Colin. Here's my face. Joe's just quickly run to the loo. I think his video is holding up a little better than in previous live streams. Brendan Harpsnake, what did you say here? So if you've got a question for Joe, we'll slowly work through these questions. We've got 5 topics. I'll be editing the video afterwards and make it into more digestible chunks, because we're diving a little bit deeper into the blue tongue mutation industry, and we'll see. So talk about stuff that we haven't spoken about before. So. Oh, thanks, Ati. Yeah, I still want to come and take some photos of your blue tongues, mate. So yeah, there's a few people watching. I hope everybody's doing well. We haven't done a stream in a while, but these should be happening now once a month. We're waiting for Mari Bahagia to arrive in Queensland as well, and then we'll probably do another group video. Next month we'll hold another reptile Q&A with a larger crew. What I wanted to do is I want to try and hit on individual types of reptiles. So I'm thinking about doing a bearded dragon episode and get maybe the beardy vet in and discuss beardies and how to keep them right, and, you know, discuss all these topics of, you know, if you can keep them on soil or not. And he's back. Here we go. Now I don't feel so alone anymore. It's from the whatever you're drinking there that's making.
It's a hot day up here. It was 32 up here today, and it's real humid. And sitting here, everything you do today, you're sweating. But yeah, the can, yeah, that's making me run to the toilet.
You've broken the seal now, so it's game over. So let me just see. I know your name, please. Yeah, well, let me just put my name up here. My name's Manice, and the one on the right-hand side is Mr. Joe Ball. So it's Danny. Oh, Danny does he knows you though, doesn't he? Danny Gordon?
No, I'm not sure. He must know me. I don't know Danny that well. Happy to answer his questions, but I don't know him that well.
All right,
I've
there we
answered
go.
Brendan's question there when he says, Joe, is it only the hypers that are albino that show the orange up the sides? No, Brendan, it's not. That's just the polygenic influence of adding new blood. So the original hypers were much blacker, yeah, because they were a locality that was, it was one locality. They were a dark lizard. And then once you started adding other localities of easterns and northerns, then the amount of black seemed to decrease, which exposed the orange pigment that was underneath. So that is not a marker for another gene.
Let's have a look at talking about the hypers. Let's have a look at this photo here. So, Joe, what have we got here, mate?
Oh, that's just a larva. It's a northern blood larva, and that's the reason why I put that photo in there. You can't avoid that. That is still
The best.
The best. It's the best.
I'm sitting and looking at that, and I'm going, I just said I'll probably won't do blue tongues, but that would be the exception. But a real orange one, that would be the trophy animal in a big enclosure, and I'd keep that.
And that's all I see when I see it now is literally that, beat that. And it may sound a bit, I know I was the first to make that animal, and regardless of that, it wouldn't matter even if it was somebody else, I'd still look at that and go, you've got to beat that. Yeah. And you looked at that Anery Hyper, it was nice. Yeah, it was good, but does it beat that?
Yeah, but I guess this sort of brings it in line with the
lizard still. Yeah.
This brings it in line with the ball pythons and the retics and all these fancy mutations from overseas, all these fancy combinations from overseas. This is sort of what the original thought process was. When you made that lizard, did it look the way you imagine it to look? Because that's what drives our imagination, is what drives us to make these animals.
To a degree, yeah. I can't, I saw the orange underneath the black blue tongue, and I thought, yeah, it's probably going to be a high orange albino, but I didn't put that much thought into it at that point. It was just want to do it, like that was what it was. And then I suppose when that was produced, then you start to see, well, if you can do that, how'd you do that? And how'd you do that? You move from there. So, and for me, it's always been a learning curve. A few people may look at what I've achieved with reptile mutations or whatever and think, oh, he knows his stuff. But no, it's just every part of it, you learn something else. And then you go, how do I do that? And how do I do that? It's all just a learning curve. And essentially, it could have looked totally different. And I wouldn't have been surprised,
That's something I wanted to ask you before. For the amount of time that those two mutations have been around, there's not that many around. Is there? I would have thought there'd be a lot more larvas around by now than there are. Is there a reason for that, Joe?
Yeah, and that goes back to what we're saying. That's the viability of certain lines. Some of my initial stuff, to be honest, it didn't work. I managed to make the first larvas, but some of the progeny of those and those animals weren't necessarily breeding fit. And some of the people that bought into that struggled with them, so on. It wasn't until some northern blood was introduced and all those people that got them used them to outbreed that the things managed to improve. And that story is quite typical when you think of overlaying mutations, whether across quite a few species.
Yeah.
So the reason is the first ones weren't good enough.
Have you made larva to larva clutches?
Just this season is the first time I've done it successfully.
And what was the? I don't want to pry, but what was sort of the viability like for the?
Yeah, they're good. There's people with those that they're good. That's for the first time, and that's nearly 10 years later. So, and you have to think that those two genetics come from Eastern blue tongues, which are a doughier blue tongue in general. So you're talking about there's specific issues with hypers in general in the Eastern blue tongue, and there's specific issues with the albino. So
So
You were tying up two doughy mutations from the outset, and that, in many ways, I was probably a bit lucky to get there so early.
So did you have to revisit the whole project and start and approach it a different way to make it so you had to redo the heads, or how did you go about to strengthen the line?
Look, you can answer that question with a straight yes.
Yeah.
But the reality is, for anybody that's doing multi-genetics, is that that's yes every year. And that's what I learned. You have to revisit every single desirable combination every single year.
Yeah.
Like lavas are desirable, your alabasters are desirable, your platinums are desirable, all those things. Unless you're adding some new blood into those combinations, they will move backwards. And that therein lies where some of the issues with blue tongue combinations.
So I think a good tip that we can give to any aspiring blue tongue breeders is to, you can't will a project to be viable. If you start a project with animals that are not vigorous and that have got issues, it's sometimes better to go back and say, look, I can't do this with this specific bloodline or these animals. I might have to do it over.
I've thought about this quite a bit, man. And this is what hits blue tongue mutations on the head. You can buy pets,
yeah,
but you can't buy breeding success. Breeding success comes from a bit further within.
Yeah,
you've got to buy from a few different sources. You've got to think a little bit about it, and you've got to have a bit of a plan. Bear in mind also, these animals breed at 18 months of age. So just buying animals and thinking you can pair brother and sister the next year and think that you can achieve all your goals, that's very short term. Why not buy some of these animals and go, right, I've got some unrelated stuff, I'll make some hets. It's still only a three-year process, which really isn't that long.
Yeah.
And that was how I did it to start with. To me it was a hobby. I bought albinos, I put them to northerns, and I put them to unrelated animals from the outset. I had no desire to really just make albinos,
Yeah. And I remember the original backlash. I don't know what that. Can you hear that muddled sound when I speak, or is it just on my side?
No, I can't hear it. No.
I think it's just feedback that I'm getting into the headset. But I remember the early days when we started to do outcrossing, and you did there was so much backlash.
Yeah, there was a bit because it was east and northern cross and all that stuff. I just picked these two questions up, and Jeff, we'll look at the patchwork in a little while. Danny Gorman, my T negative cross T negative. Rana Salvatore offspring look very similar to either high orange, 100% viable and 100% insanely beautiful. Breeding reptiles as a passion can't be about making money. I agree with that, Danny. That goes back to whoever it was that was talking about was it Danny that was even talking about monitors earlier? The Salvatore stuff shows you that that there is the potential in the Varanids to do what's being done in the blue tongues. You just need more phenotypes to pop up.
There was a question like, have you heard anything more from those that you remember that piebald looking blue tongue that they found last year? Any more news of that? I know that went to the Australian Reptile Park. Have you heard anything else from that?
To be honest, no. I asked for some photos to go in some stuff that I'm trying to write, and I haven't got them yet. So the answer is not much information, no. The patchwork stuff that I'm working on, I believe, has similar footprints to that. Does it look the same as that? No, it doesn't. But I do believe we're not far away from having that anyway.
Yeah, let's have a look at the photos, yeah. Okay, so that's smashing photo. I love that photo. So give us a rundown of what we've got here, Jay.
This is where we start to get into multi-gene combos. and we start to get lots of different genotypes, but we have very similar phenotypes. And you'd look at that and go, well, are they all the same? Well, yeah, but genetically, no, they're not all the same, So, and that's when overlaying all the different mutations can lead to just lots of washed out animals. All beautiful, because everybody loves a white reptile, but, you're getting a washed out animal. And within there, you've got your snows, which are your anery or xanthic albinos. You've got your white northern albinos. Then you've got a triple combination of your anery, your white, and your albino. And there would be some hypermel in there too, but you wouldn't know because it's been taken out. So, that was just a photo in context with the 4-gene stuff that shows that you're going to get a lot of washed out animals in there. So next,
how many clutches was in there? Was that a mixed clutch?
Oh, that's from half a dozen different clutches. Litters. Let's get litters right.
Litters, yeah. Sorry. Okay, what have we got here, Joe?
I got. Hey, Joe. I heard your wife is awesome. Is that correct? She thinks she is, Leah. Yeah, she does.
Let's not start a situation here. Yeah. Julie is very nice. I like Julie. Yeah. It's very nice. What's
and this is I'm 99.9% convinced this is your quadruple visual. So you go back to those. You go back. Yeah, there's the wife laughing. Yeah, I think so too. Oh, yeah. Go back to that white. Stay on the blue tongues. So when you looked at the tub with the half a dozen different animals there, you could see there was still pigment there, so that none of those are pure white. You know, and it's proven that each one of those is either a double or a triple visual, phenotypically and by what they can breed. So in there is nothing like the next animal.
So what is? Give me. So you said quad genetics. So what are the quad genetics, please?
So that animal there is white northern. It's albino. Obviously, it's what it's albino. Look at the eyes.
Yeah.
It's white northern. I think quite clearly because of the depth of white. And then you've got anery, which it clearly is because there's no orange in the eyeballs.
Yep.
And it's also hypermel because I can see it, but it's a depth of pigment behind the scale. There's like a shadow behind each scale. So, and it is phenotypically totally different to any of those in the previous, and the parents, the parentage was a triple visual over another double visual. So the chances of it not being the quadruple visual is almost zero when you look at the parentage and you look at the previous precedent. But anyway, that's another discussion. But that there was your quadruple visual, and then this is a chart. This is something that we'll have a look at. Can everybody that's watching see that or see the text on it? Because I can't. I just know what's on it.
You don't need to read it.
I wrote it, so I should be able to. And what that chart is showing is that you've got along the top line you've got your parents. So you've got your sire and your dam. So your male and your female, and each of the parents are 100% het for all of the 4 traits that we've discussed. And
I'm trying to see if I can zoom. I'm trying to see if I can zoom in.
Zoom in a bit on it, yeah.
And I think they'll be able to zoom in on their phones or on whatever tablet or whatever they want. So
I can send that to anybody anyway. But basically, what that shows is, and anybody that breeds any colour form of any animal, whether it's snakes, dogs, birds, whatever, that is that's relevant, because when you've got four traits in there, you're gonna get a mixed bag, and that sort of covers what you can expect in there. Yeah. And the best way to describe it is if you rewind it to double genetics. Now let's rewind it to single genetics, and we all know if you put a het to a het, you'll get a 1 in 4 visual, right? So you'll get one color, you'll get the rest are wild type possibles, so on.
Do we want it big, or do we want...
Then when you add a second trait, it changes from 1 in 4 to 1 in 16. The multiple is by 4. And that's because each one of those possibilities in the first 4 has another 4 possibilities that it could be. So it becomes 1 in 16. And then when you add a third genetic, you're timesing the 16 by 4 again, and it becomes 1 in 64. Is your chance to produce the triple visual. And then, which that table illustrates, is you add a fourth trait, it's a 1 in 256.
Yeah.
And every single animal in there, if it's visual for one trait, it's possible for the other 3 traits. And if it's a double visual for one trait, it's possible for the other 2 traits, so on and so forth. If it's a wild type, it's possible for all 4 traits. And what that does is it breaks it down. Yes, your quadruple visual is a 1 in 256, but every other one of the animals before you get to that 256th animal is covered in there. So you'll get single gene albinos, hypermels, anery, white northern. Then you'll get your double visuals, your snows, your lava, your platinum, your blackout, your sunglow, and your alabaster.
Yeah.
And this was shown in those litter photos earlier, a sample. And then you'll get your triple visuals, which is your moon glow, which has got your white northern, albino, and anery. Then you'll get your mercury, which is hypermel, white northern, and anery, and then so on and so forth till you get to your quadruple visual, which we've just had a look at.
And that would even be more involved if the hypermelanistic was actually a recessive as well. Would have.
There is a component of incomplete dominance with hypermel, but I will have to say that in this instance that actually does become a recessive because you're mixing locality. So your hets and your single copy of the hyper becomes that objective that you can't pick it.
Oh, okay. That's
because it's a soft change anyway.
Yeah.
So you're adding a lighter form, which is your Darwin, which, you basically are working with 4 recessives when it gets to that.
Bloody hell, here's a question. Victor.
We'll get to that. Victor, that's coming. That's next photo almost. Hopefully that made some sense. It's a can of worms, I know. But if you actually request a picture of that and actually zoom in on it, you can see actually what those litters are. And this is T negative, T positive stuff. And this is the first quintuple genetic sample out of a quintuple genetic litter.
Yep. We go live.
And you can see 5 genes there. You've got both of those. That on the left is a T plus, so is the one on the right.
Yep.
So that's 1 gene. The second animal there is an alabaster, so that's white northern and an anery. Then you've got a lava there, which is obviously albino and hyper. And then you've got a sunglow, which is white northern and albino. So that's 5 genes in those, and they're all siblings. And that lava, I believe to be T plus lava too. So that answers the question of T negative over T positive and all that.
I was was going to say there's a different type of intensity on the back of that larva. It does have a different tones to it than the others that I've seen. Even the pink flashing next to the spine, running.
There has to be an element of objectiveness when you're reviewing the look of animals when they're born. You can't be 110% conclusive because obviously can't breed a 2-week-old animal, but you can make a call based on the phenotype compared to previous animals that you've produced.
Yeah.
So I know that people will always say, "Oh, how do you know that? You're making an assumption," and I get that. That's real, but you also have to make a call when you've got a new litter if you're going to share some of the pictures and say what you think it may well be. And some of the next photos help.
But Joe, it's like what we used to say. You've got that when you breed reptiles in the numbers that I've bred and that you've bred in your life, you sort of you build up a database in your head of what animals that you've actually seen, and you've seen how they've turned out.
Yeah, and
it gives
then
you
immediately you get a new one and you know that's what it is because
you haven't seen it before. Yeah.
Yeah, and it comes in a ratio that fits with the parents. That's what I was trying to get at in the previous one when you're talking about parentage. In the parentage, you'll say, right, it's a 1 in 4 to make that particular animal. So then when you look at the litter and you've got a 1 in 4 that looks totally different to what you've seen before, it sort of has to be it.
Yeah.
And this is the T plus stuff. I think I need to say with the T plus doesn't correlate with the T negative in this instance. If you pair a T plus to a T negative in the blue tongues, they all come out as a wild type.
Yeah.
Is the T plus an actual T plus albino? Maybe it isn't, but that goes on to labeling later, and that was the label it was given before I even got my hands on it. So, is it a recessive hypo? Possibly.
So what do you you think it might not be T positive? Do you think it might be something else?
At the end of the day, that's something that we will discuss a bit later. But you look at it there, you can see the body on it there. There's not a single black scale on that animal.
Yeah.
So effectively, it could be classed as a form of albinism.
Yeah.
So is it a T positive? It is on the albino spectrum, but is it more of a hypomelanistic eye?
That's what I would have thought was maybe a really nice hypo. Do they vary the range of the
none of them have a black scale on them at any point. So when you look at the classification of T positive, it says that
they can have various amounts of.
It's the black pigment is denatured to leaving a lavender. But then you look at the definition of albinism in birds, and it's a pure white animal. So there's a few different depictions of albinism. In reptiles, albinism is a scale. You've got caramel albino through to a T negative albino, and then it's 5 or 6 different phenotypes along a range which all take away the black pigment. So, loosely, it's an albino because it takes away the black pigment, but it's a recessive mutation nonetheless. And I think you have to get away from the label and look at what you're doing and going, that was the name it was given, so we have to run with it. Everybody understands it as that. And that's what it is.
It was almost like the codom phenomena that we saw in the early days of reptile keeping. That was there. We couldn't accept that. It had to be incomplete. And I don't know. The carpets the jags are always called codom.
Yeah, and then it's just arguing for the sake of it.
Yeah.
And that's what it becomes. So the T plus and the T negative, they're not compatible, but that's it. If you go back to that photo, I think, or even the next photo, there's a couple more. So I believe that's that same animal. That's and there it is again. That to me, that's that same animal, a bit more age on it. To me, that's a T plus larva, and that's the T plus that it's sat on there. And then the next, I've actually got a photo of it compared to. That's it compared to a larva. I can get it out if you want me to.
Yeah, we're going to see your video looks all right tonight. Yeah, get it out if you want.
Yeah. So that's him there, and I'll get out an adult larva just to I'll leave him looking at the screen.
Lutang on the run.
He won't go far.
Very nice. Oh, there we go.
You can see a full contrast in there.
Oh my, yes.
You can see the purple hues that the T positive leaves. You can see that in the side of that animal and right through it. It's clearly a larva because of the head colour. There's no other animal, no other combination that gives that head colour.
Yep.
Either. So the argument of it being a larva is conclusive.
When was that born?
This big guy's a year old, but that's a straight larva with no T plus in it. This one was born in December.
Oh, okay. So that's so they can back on the size if they. Okay, I didn't know they can grow that fast.
Yeah, and this guy's sort of 87.5% northern now. So you've got, that's basically a northern blue tongue with all that genetics in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
interesting. Yeah, somebody that's
yes, Danny. T negative to T positive is not compatible straight off the bat. It produces wild types, and you're then in a situation of two recessives. And here's the result. Although that's got hypermel in it as well. That's a T negative, T positive hypermel.
Yeah, that's confusing, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, hell! How long did that animal take to make? How many years?
Well, once I've got the quad line, it's easy to add something to it, because then you pick your animal that's got the most genetics in it to pair to the T positive, and then you've got your quintuple hets, and then you're away, Yeah. And somebody's saying there with the similar mutation in the northern, we call a T positive, and I've seen that northern. That's even less of a T positive than the guys here in Australia. I like that animal. I'm not trying to put it down, but the animal in the States, that's no more an albino than that's a hypo. But again, it's a mutation. That's what you guys call it. So that's what it will get labeled with, and it's not worth falling out over because it's just a name, and none of us are geneticists. So at the end of the day, you use it and you go and use that and pair it to something else and make something else and use it for what it's worth. Just put these guys back.
Yeah, sure. So in my Salvatores, they were compatible if you're going on visual standards. Yeah, I mean, I didn't even know that. I didn't know that the T positive and the T minus wasn't compatible. That's news to me.
Yeah, it's two separate traits.
Ooh, where did you originally get that? Was it Richard Hudspeth that had? Was one of them?
It's Richard Hudspeth was the first guy to grab one of those. He lives up at Rocky, and there was a guy up there that was breeding them, who I later connected with and exchanged a portion of that group, so that I had 3 or 4 animals to work with.
So what? So what did you end up with, a male or a female? And then what did you breed to that?
I got 4 or 5 of them, to be honest, and I had
okay.
limited. They,
So
they, they were hard to work with.
yeah.
Very aggressive, big, nasty northerns. Yeah, and I managed to get a few more on the ground before I actually managed to do an outcross.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Mm.
Should I
So it
know?
took a few years, if you remember. I mean, it's easy now. It looks like it hasn't taken that long. But that was when he had that first animal, and that picture was posted. That was
2014, I reckon. 2000. It would have been,
that was in your heyday, Manis, when you were
yeah.
driving around in your vehicle and
That was 2000. Yeah, because I
running the
remember he
shows.
posted.
2000 and sort of 12 or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, like I mean that's how did I not know that? I mean, I was pretty.
Do you remember it? It was posted on FB, wasn't it? There was those photos, and do you know who actually labelled it a T positive? It was actually Brian Barczyk,
Oh, really?
because he saw it. Oh, and look, he didn't go, "That's a T positive." He just said
Looks
that
like.
has the hallmarks of a T positive, and that is where a lot of labels come from, and that's why I don't like to get hung up on them. And I think too many people get lost in that. It's just a certain person in a certain time says a certain thing, and because it's an easy thing to hang your coat on, you'll run with it, don't you? You know that they're the T positive blue tongues. Well,
Yeah, well, we'll cover that a bit later because that's a part of the later on.
yeah.
So
It
there's
don't matter. It don't matter, does it? You know.
no, it doesn't matter. I mean, I just want to understand them better, you know. So there's a great question here from Wal Roberts, leading into the next section of. So that was the next caption that we were going to run with.
Yes, Wal. Where's Wal from?
He's New South Wales, I think.
Is he? Yeah.
So the progress of the blotched blue tongues so far.
So we'll just summarise there. We've got syncoides there. That's 5 gene, and we'll add a little bit more to that later. But let's look at blotches. Or do you want to just actually no? Just take that away. Blotches is coming. Let's look at those photos I sent you of the patchwork and the patterns. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to link it back in.
Okay, let me just. How do I get out of this? Sorry. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, Wal from Penrith. The
Yes.
blotches are coming, mate. You're just going to have to wait 10 minutes.
There we go.
And Jordan, the T plus hypermel combo. I'm not sure, Jordan. I think one of the T plus that I've got is very dark. I need to produce more to know. It's almost a shame that there's the triple visual and not the double visual, because sometimes when you've got all the genetics in there, you sometimes have to wait to get. Sometimes you get a triple or a quadruple before a double visual. It's funny how it works, but. Yeah, I haven't conclusively got that one yet, Jordan. No, it would be the answer to that question.
There you go.
So yeah, next level to your 5. So your first 5 were albino, hypermel, anery, white northern, and what was the one I missed? T plus. So the next level is this guy will make it 6 genes, and then if you go on to the next photo but then roll back, I could probably stay on this photo actually because it's got both of them. These are the next 2 mutations. So this is number 6 and number 7 in the blue tongue trilogy, in the syncoides trilogy. So you've got patchwork there, which we'll discuss a little bit more in depth in a minute. We've looked at the pink tongue and how it disrupts the patches and disrupts the pattern and everything. But then you've got the patternless there too. Now that is a proper incomplete dominant mutation, more so than the hypermel. Your single copy animals are visibly different, and there's a genuine superform. That is what would be akin to a zebra carpet python.
So is that the one with the stripes that you got at one stage next to the sock?
That turned out to be a recessive, and we didn't use that. This is something else that that produced reduced pattern at het level, and then this super form. So it's literally like a zebra.
Okay.
With a zebra carpet python, and all that can now be added into those other 5 genes. So you're then going to be able to not only play with the 5 color mutations that you've got, but you're going to be able to disrupt the pattern over the top of it. So what's a patchwork larva going to look like? What's a patternless larva going to look like? What's a patternless anery? Although that's what that is actually. That next picture again.
That is going to be next level stuff.
That's exanthic already. That one there. So that's a black eye. So that's your exanthic patternless there. Crazy. So that's your that's not just patternless. That's exanthic patternless.
Bloody hell.
And then you've got patchwork over the top, which I've discussed with certain people. Jordan, one of them, he's a bird guy. That's the closest that we've got, other than that one animal that's sat in Sydney too, a pied.
Yeah.
It's got the same look as that animal that's in Sydney. It's got the same pink tongue. It's got the same line down the back, and it's a proven recessive. So we'll see what that can do. I don't want to. That's why I called it patchwork. I don't want to go and call it a pied, and people say that I'm full of the proverbial BS, because that's not what I'm about. That's a patchwork. It's a proven mutation.
Yeah.
And let's see what it can do. I think, and I think if you put that, what's that going to do to a blackout? For instance, we've got that anery hyper that's already got black and white scales. What happens when you pull more of the black scales out and you've just got a black line down the back? Then I think you're starting to look at panda blue tongues.
Yeah, that's another 10-year. That'll be another 10-year process.
Well, that's and that's what those 2 photos are about. It's about showing, we've got 5 genetics, but there's 7 mutations, and there's other people out there may have other things they want to throw into the mix. Yeah. I just say, bring it. I don't dispute other people's work. I just say bring it to the table and show us.
Work,
Yeah.
So, let's have a look at some of the blotched blue tongues, and let me just quickly see. I might have to just jump through the pictures. Yeah, hang on. Okay, so there we go.
There's a couple of mutations which I've been lucky enough to prove out.
Okay, so the first one.
That's and it's individually stunning. It's a black-eyed anery or exanthic or whatever you want to call it, but there she is, and she's proven out an anomaly in the sense that what she's actually produced are exanthics, but they don't look like her. They're not as white as her.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I don't want to. The bird world covers it in another. I don't want to get into that because it's a reptile audience, but it's proven out to be exanthic. I'll actually I brought her in specially.
All right. Is this a new animal that you're working with, Joe, or is it something that you've had?
But here she is, and here's her proven.
Oh yeah.
You see the black eyes, and all the other progeny are like a wild type blue tongue. I mean, that look.
Yeah, that's very nice.
So that's the outcome. But you've got soft yellows and you've got black eyes. So you've got a definite mutation. But she's another level again.
Crazy, isn't it?
And it just shows these guys are small litters, so there's some more work to go there. So it's a proven exanthic mutation, but you've got a partial removal of the yellows there and a total removal of the yellows there, but you've got the black eye. And the siblings, the wild type siblings, are totally different again. It's not it's not an example of somebody fudging over the results of a mutation. It's literally it is what it is. But anyway, that's one, and it's still being worked on. So
That's some great visual cues, though. The black eyes. That's a good tell. That's something people should, when people.
that was the same.
There's so much you can tell by just being observant with reptiles. You might have something sitting in a cage at your house that you don't know is carrying some crazy genetics, and it's could be as simple as a black eye. Out of like a odd black eye or scales in certain positions or whatever that could be showing you that there's something deeper down. That you need to focus on. Crazy.
Yeah, Gabe does have some super cool blue tongues, and I'll make reference to Gabe a bit later on because he's helped me with some of my terminology, which we'll look at later on.
I haven't spoken to Gabe in ages. Is he still around? Is he still doing
it? Yeah. And so next with the blotches, this guy's been around for a while. I don't want to. It's actually my favourite piece of blotch blue tongue work, but I don't want to get stuck on something that's been around for a while. This is a genuine incomplete dominant mutation. Again, it's like the patternless syncoides. You've got the visual hets there that break the pattern, and you've got the superform. And what I've been fortunate enough to do on the next photo is we've got the tub at the top. These are all double genetic animals, so I've combined the two mutations. So you can see a visual het there, your superform, and you can see your exanthic female there. So those guys up there are visual het for patternless, but they're also het exanthic. So the blotch blue tongue world is close to producing its first double visual. But of course, it takes a bit longer because the litters are smaller. They're a bit hit and miss.
Yeah.
And so that's where it's at.
How many years has that taken? That's an endless story there so far.
If I'd known, I'd wonder if you'd ever get involved in it. And it's funny because it ties in. I speak to an old bird keeper down in Victoria. Jordan, who's commenting on it, knows him quite well, and he's done some similar work with galahs, who drop small clutches, blue-tongued litters, birds' clutches, and he's managed to combine the genetics and make double visual animals out of these galahs, and it's taken him like 20 years. I've had those blotches for over 10 years, and I've now got double hets. It's definitely not something that's financial. It's just something that I just tickle away at. Because it's okay making the mutation. You've then got to produce breeding fit examples of that mutation to put to breeding fit examples of a second mutation to then get a viable litter. Yeah. And it's not as straightforward as people would think. There's basically just dud years in there where it just doesn't happen. Like I tried those pairings to make those double hets 4 years in a row, and this is the first year that I've made them. So
would they do better than Victoria, those blue tongues though, do you think? Would they
I don't really see any evidence to suggest that they would. I breed those things every year. I breed blotches every year, 2 or 3 litters, but I just think it falls down to you're working with mutations and only a very, very small number of them. So, yes, I've got breeding hets of both mutations, but like I say, I've got to produce viable breeding visual animals to make the next level, Like it's not, yes, maybe the answer to your question, but not necessarily, It's okay producing the odd coloured animal from some hets, but you try and produce breeding fit animals that are then can mate with another visual animal to make you another good litter. It's early days, and you need a few of the animals on the ground before you can get to that point, which I'm getting there. Yeah.
Let's have a look at this one. So this is something new that you alerted me to a while back. A
Yeah,
black.
yeah. This is nothing to do with me. Um, just want to get stuck on what I'm doing. You know, that those are the only two mutations out there that have been replicated. What I've done, but also in the blotchy world, there's obviously examples of albinism. Nobody's done anything with them.
Yeah.
The zoos seem to sit on the individuals that are found, like the ones in Tasmania. They just seem to grow old and nobody does with them. But this guy's in the hands of a Victorian keeper. It's a lowland specimen and looks all ends up a mirror of the hypermelinous syncoides because it's got the orange belly as well. So
Yeah.
hopefully that's a female. His name's Alex. He struggled a bit with his syncoides mutations, but down in the country of blotchies, he's looks to have something there which I think will be viable.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
I do
So
like I do like the black blue tongues. I've always been a big
yeah,
fan. It's just something about them, you know.
they offer the diversity because most species, whether it's blue tongues, carpets, antaresia, birds, there always tends to be 4 or 5 diluting mutations, and that always seems to only be individual instances of a mutation that will put the pigment back in again to give you your contrast, you know.
Yeah,
And I think anything that's jet black will always stand out and always grab the attention,
yeah.
you know.
There's a few questions here. Josh, I think he's referring to the blue tongues, a long-term passion project. We could say, yeah,
Yeah,
10 years.
it's not there yet, mate, but it would chip away. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that sort of covers the. Is there anything else in the? So that's where you are with the blotch blue tongue. So that's. But you're happy with the progress so far? It's a slow
I
mountain.
look at you know, and immediately because you're honest about things, people say, "Oh, they'll do better down here. They'll do better down here." But look, if I honestly thought that they were failing up here, I'd give them away. But they don't. They all the hets breed well up here. I breed blotch blue tongues every year. I get 2 or 3 litters every year. But it's not just about breeding blotchies. I could set blotchies up and breed blotchies. You know, that's just it's mutation breeding over the top. That's a totally different ball game. And you're talking about you know, such a small fragment. You know, you've got 2 different mutations, and you've got to get the right sexes to pair them together to make double genetics. It's not just about breeding blotchies, you know.
Yeah.
It's an overlay. And yes, blotchies probably do breed a little bit better down south, but yeah.
Atty says, am I pronouncing Atty's name right?
Yeah.
Atty, yeah.
Class.
He also says, he confirms what you've been saying. Cold weather isn't the silver bullet for blotchies. So, yeah.
No, because you put them in a box in the cold, you'll kill them. Funny that.
Yeah.
Funny that. That's the same with any reptile. Hey,
Yeah.
they still got to roam around down there and find a north-facing slope so they can sun their backs. And I see all the backyard blotchy breeders down there in Victoria with their birdies cages sat adjacent to the backyard fence in the 500 square property. You know, that gets 10 minutes of sunlight between midday and 10 past midday. Yeah, I know that's a bit harsh, but you know it's a bit more than that. Just because they're in Victoria, it's not.
They find the sun.
Yes, yeah, and there would be some survivors out there, you know, in the blotchy world that know how to navigate, and they can't, and they're good at navigating large areas to find that sun in a colder climate. Whereas you put them in some of the smaller outdoor setups that I see, and I know there's love there, but it's quite often a death sentence. Whereas you put them in the smaller boxes up here, where you've got a closed tighter ambient temperature, they will breed probably better in many instances because they're going to get more of what they want, you know. So anyway, that's it's. You could write a book on that stuff, and I still don't think you'd get there. I really don't. That's stuff that
Everybody does it. So let's move on to topic number 3. Blue tongue mutations in Australia, general viability overview, and how it's progressing. So I think we touched
we've covered it. We've covered it quite a bit, and that's what we were looking at there. You know, I'll start by saying this: like I've had various goes at breeding shinglebacks, western blue tongues, central blue tongues, all the high maintenance stuff, or that's gathered that name over the years here in southeast Queensland, and it's basically failed.
Yeah,
I've had individual instances of breeding westerns. I've bred some Tasmanian blotches too, but animals that are too far out of their natural range, you're going to struggle with it, and that's a fact. And unless you really get it right, and you need the right animals, so you need a bit of luck in there as well. You need the best examples of those animals. So that's an example of where I fail here. I fail with westerns, I fail with centrals, I fail with shinglebacks. So then everything that I do well with is eastern northern mixes, mutations. Guess what? Southeast Queensland, which is sort of a complement of the two conditions that those two animals do well in.
Yeah.
And then you get those and you move them down to Melbourne. I'll sort of say it as it is. I'll get to break it down the best. I can have a litter of blue tongues. I'll send 3 from the same litter down to Melbourne, and 3 from the same litter up to Townsville, and 3 from the same litter to Sydney. You can guarantee that the person that will struggle with them and be back in touch within a couple of months is the guy from Melbourne.
Yeah.
And that therein is where the potential issues with bluey morphs lies as we speak, because there's a lot of northern mix in there.
But a lot of people want to dumb down their care as well, though. I mean, that's the other problem.
Yeah.
I mean,
what you guys do down there, and it's a bit rough to say that, is you go, oh, there's blue tongues outside and it drops down to this temperature. So these guys can sit here at 10 degrees, and it's like, well, no, actually they can't, because they're northern blue tongues.
Yeah.
And I think that the perceptive care of blue tongues down there is based on the wild type that you've got down there. And I think there's a disconnect, but it's not to say that keepers don't know what they're doing either. It's just it's a bit of a mismatch. It's not fair on some of the keepers either. What needs to happen is that somebody dead set needs to mix southern blood into some of the mutations.
Yeah.
You know, it was done up here. You know, you have to think about it. Who's breeding mutations in Australia? Nobody in Victoria.
No.
Not one. You know, you look at Roger does okay in New South Wales. 2 or 3 other guys in New South Wales will produce some. Dean Bruton. There's 2 or 3 other up and coming guys, Mark Taylor, so on and so forth. Then you've got guys in Queensland that are doing it, like Phil England, myself, Brendan, all the other guys. But soon as it gets down to Victoria and South Australia, the wheels seem to come off. And
is that for blue tongues, Joe?
Yeah, that's mutation blue tongues, which was the topic.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of any. Is Atty not in Victoria?
Atty's done okay with Vix. Sorry, Atty's bred some northerns, and there is individual instances. Atty's done a couple of years where he's bred some northerns down there, but again, it's hit and miss. And I dare say, Copper's done all right, couple of years, but it's not something that I see works long term for those guys down there. You know, It happens, but it's not. It just doesn't seem to work properly.
It's not consistent. I mean, it's not the type of consistency that you want if you're a reptile breeder. You need to.
No, and the reason why I alluded to myself failing with species from other parts of Australia is it's just because I do well with certain things here doesn't mean I don't want to sit here and say, look at me, how great I am. If you send me the shinglebacks, I'll send you back less than what you sent me in a couple of years.
Somebody was just asking. Those Josh was asking about those westerns, and that was the first thing that popped into my head was like, I wonder how those westerns were when we started to talk about that. How are the western blue tongues going? All right,
they're the same number that they were when I got them, but they haven't bred. I've actually recently agreed to pass them on to somebody else. I just don't do well with stuff like that here. It just doesn't do well here. I know how to look after them, but do they breed? No, they don't. They're from an arid part of Australia. They're from Western Australia. You can see the film on my face even at this time of night. It just that stuff doesn't.
Yeah. Do you think that they would do better in a competent breeder's care in Western Australia, though?
Yes.
That's the catch. The words here, the function, the words here that is competent. That's the words that focus on.
But I do think it's one of those species too that I think they're not even that common over in Western Australia, are they?
Yeah.
And that's the issue. It's all right saying that. It's a bit of a hot potato to pass to somebody in Australia because I talked to Tristan Pace a little bit. We're talking about Goldfield shinglebacks here. I asked him to do an excerpt to put in the book that we're putting together, and all of his Goldfield shinglebacks. Yeah, he breeds them, but he lives in their backyard, and it's hit and miss. He does better than anybody else in the world, I dare say. Yeah. But do they all breed?
No.
No, they don't. And that's that. I think with some of those other subspecies of Syncoides, I think it's a notable challenge to really hit. When you think about, I breed carpet pythons here, and I really enjoy doing that, but they really are comparatively easy to breed compared to the Teliqua subspecies.
Yeah, but carpet pythons occur in your backyard as well. So I mean, it's not. It makes sense.
That's right, and look at it's comparable to Easterns, Northerns here. They will generally breed. A healthy animal will breed, but I've sat on shinglebacks here and kept them healthy for 3 or 4 years and nothing.
Yeah, crazy.
They don't even mate. They just sit there and just eat food and go, "How you going?" Yeah.
Get fat for nothing. Yeah.
Just get fat there for nothing. So I know how to look after them, and I've set them in cages that are off the ground, so you keep the humidity away from their bellies because they get the scale rot and all that. Done all that. Kept them dry on sawdust. Done all that. Yeah. But and then I hear people from the States will message me and go, "Tell me how to breed this blotched blue tongue. I'm in New York." And I go, "Well, yeah, well, good luck, mate, because it probably ain't going to happen." Yeah, you might get lucky, but it ain't going to happen for you because these things. There's a reason why they're to a specific locality in Australia. Why don't shinglebacks occur in Belmere or Caboolture?
Oh, I've never actually seen photos of captive bred blotched blue tongues in the US. Do they breed them in the US?
I think a couple of guys have done it, and
it's not a common thing though.
It's individual instances. Yeah, that's not something that happens.
Crazy. Yeah. So we've touched on husbandry. I think it's pretty straightforward. So just a quick run over basic husbandry, Joe. I don't know. We don't have to do it. Can I
No,
have
I was just in there. If somebody wants to look at husbandry, we've done this to death in your other talks. Like we something specific. Then let's listen to it. But the talk itself was about where blue tongue genetics was at, and then we wanted to have a bit of a discussion around terminology that's used in the reptile game.
So we'll go to the last topic for the night. This should be a fun one to do.
I will just stop there because we've got husbandry in it. If somebody has a husbandry question, something specific,
Let's quickly see.
we'll pick it up. I just didn't want to focus on husbandry when we'd looked at that so many times.
Somebody here, Jeff Finch just wants you to do something for him. Quick shout out.
West Side.
It's so serious.
He goes, yeah. There you go, Jeff. That was with animation too. We've got West Side Blue Tongues.
Talking about genetics, it can be so mind numbing sometimes, though, doesn't it? It's like it's an intense discussion. It's like when reptile people get together and they've sort of been in the hobby for a while, and they like you and me with, it's not just like basic banter shit. It's like, let's get in. Your brain was working overtime to try and digest the information. It's serious stuff. Like there's no smiles. It's just frowns, serious business, and then.
I just want to get that question before it disappears.
Which one?
Said about the Oreo blue tongue from Roger Kramer.
Oh, here we go. Don't do it.
You'll have to ask Roger.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that. We won't get that. Yeah, Darren Boswell. Look at this guy. He just, I put it everywhere. We were going to at least 7 or 8 pages, and Darren says he didn't know this was on. Come on, Darren. Like at least go on to the, it's usually on the Carbon Python TV page if something's coming down the drain pipe for the weekend, But no, can't believe you missed that. So Jeff says, just a response. Thank you. You're a legend. Thanks, Jay.
All good, Jeffrey. West Side Blue Tongues.
Yeah, we have to promote each other in this industry. Yeah. That's something that we should do more of, like we're all in this together, we really are in this together, not the other thing, but in reptile keeping, we're all together. So in any case, let's tackle the last. I don't think there's any husbandry questions. I think it's pretty straightforward.
It was about genetics tonight, wasn't it? It was.
Yes, it's all about genetics. And here we go. So this is the Joe Ball approach to naming. So I can't think of anybody else in Australia that's had the success with naming blue tongues. I mean, there's a formula with it when it comes to naming your blue tongues, and you're one of the few guys that can actually claim to have named blue tongue combos. So how do you go about? I mean, I see there's a lot of confusion these days with naming.
There was a guy that mentioned that Gabe's bred a few mutations earlier, and I think it was something that Gabe said to me a while ago. I don't know when it was, so on and so forth, but and this to me is where terminology and naming has to follow, and the Americans set the precedence, and it starts initially by determining what actually a line consists of first and foremost. And then the other stuff follows on the back of that. And too often I just see people go, oh, here's my line of animals. I put this to this. This is my line. Look at me. I'm amazing. This is my line. And that's great. That's fine. But how does that work when everybody does that? And that's where the issue lies, because then you've got confusion and nobody knows where anything is heading from that point. So the reality is that a line, especially in mutation genetics, is the mutation itself, and that's it. So in blue tongues, you've got what we've just discussed, 7 lines. You've got your albino, which is snake ranch line. You've got your hypermel, which is snake ranch. You've got your anery. There is a few of those, so they would be split into lines. I've done one. I think there was a chick up north who did one, Rebecca, and so on. So the mutation itself is a line. The T plus was Dave, I forget his surname, from Rocky. So all those mutations are a line. They consist a line. Then everything from that is comprised of those lines. So if you put, like, for instance, when I put the hypermel to a albino and made the larva, that's not my line all of a sudden. No, the lineage is snake ranch, but the combination larva, I was the first to make the combination. But I don't suddenly presume to own a line, because they're 2 lines of animals that were, that's the lineage.
Yep.
And that's how the Americans do it. They go, there's a line, there's one albino line.
The original one, yeah.
Just because you outbreed it, you put it to something unrelated. You don't just suddenly go, and I see this a lot, I've got 8 different lines of albinos. Well, that's just confusing. I'm sorry, that's confusing. No, you don't. You have 1 line of albino. You may have done some outbreeding with it, and that's a subtext, but it's one line of albino. And then combinations, the combo is something different. So then your combo can be named something different because it's different phenotype, etc. And if everybody stuck to that, there would be less confusion in the reptile game, So lineage denotes an actual mutation or an actual origin, and then it's combinations after that. Does that make sense to you, Manis?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I know that there can be an amount of breeding with something, and you can create something totally different. You can line breed an animal, and that there is some exceptions, but I think there has to be some strictness when people are doing that. Otherwise, it's not fair on the consumer.
So so your albino,
I don't have an albino line. A lot of people would say Joe's albino line. No, it's
so you still go back to the where it started, the original root.
Yeah, and it's 1 albino line. The snows are a combination of 2 lines.
Yeah.
So are your larvas, they're a combination of 2 lines. So is your platinum, it's a combination of 2 lines. The lineage for the platinum is John Robert Coward and Snake Ranch Hypermel.
Yeah.
And the platinum, it is the platinum. That then you get if you made that combo, that's the go. In that case, it was Roger. And, with the larva, but you have to stick to the lineage of the animals. You can't. I've outbred albinos a dozen times. Does that make 12 different lines?
No.
It just can't, can it?
Here's a question from Josh. How do you see that fit with locality animals? Is the formula just the whoever brought them in type?
No, they're just localities, aren't they, Josh? Like if you've got some, you can't just go and catch some Tunnel Creek Kimberleys and then just go, it's my line of Kimberleys. They're Tunnel Creek locality.
Yeah.
You need to drop, everybody needs to drop the ego out of it and call it what it is. Because
Tasmanian blue tongue would be Tasmanian blue tongue.
It's a Tasmanian bluey, yeah.
Blue tongue is a Western blue tongue.
It's a Western blue tongue, because as soon as somebody buys it, they're not worried about what you bred it.
No.
In my experience, anyway, nobody really cares. Some people will gone back to this, that, and the other, but most just try and call it what it is,
I think that's the supplemental information that you add, like this is a Tasmanian blue tongue that was collected, blah,
It
blah,
was
blah, blah,
some
blah.
of the stuff from yeah. But
So, and with the,
I'm just trying to think of somebody that's bred Tassies, that was all. It's like, Dave up here. Yeah, some Tassies that Dave bred. But they all come from Tassie. They're not his line, like that's, yeah.
But when it comes to the combination stuff, you think that there's so even the combination stuff, you just get to name the combo.
Yeah, and I think that's a given, isn't it? That's the precedent in reptiles, and that's what this is all about. It's not about me sitting here telling everybody what they need to do. Far from it. I know this is a show that's it's me and yourself having a conversation, but I'm just trying to interpret how I interpreted what was laid out for me. And when I look at what the Americans have done, yeah, they haven't always stuck to it, but how they do it is that they will name a type of albino, that's the lineage, and then if somebody makes a combination, they then have the right to name that combination.
Yeah.
And that then is not a line, you name the combo. And then it rolls on from there, doesn't it?
And I think where they distinguish as well, though, is where where they do differ, though, is where there's two circumstances of, say, a T minus albino. You'd have you'd have the guy that actually proved out that team. I think it's with the boas. There's two types. There's the boas. There's multiple lines, multiple mutations of albinism. So they would add the breeder's surname just to sort of distinguish between but they still just T minus albinos.
Yeah, and we can always add levels of complexity, can't we? And that's what it is. But you can't add levels of complexity unless the basics are there.
Yeah.
And some would say they're just trying to add levels of complexity, and that's fine. I get it. What I'm saying is obviously open for debate as well, but that's just how I see it.
So how do you feel about? So how do you feel about people jumping on naming double and triple mutations without doing the necessary? So what type of onus is there on breeders to actually prove out genes before they sort of market it as something? I mean, we can. I don't want to really mention direct examples, but if somebody,
I think it goes back to precedent again. I think if you name something based on its phenotype, a double genetic animal, I think there's a few snows out there that probably hit that note at the moment. For me personally, probably are snows. I've spoke to Peter a bit about his. I've seen his exanthics and so on. Probably are snows, but I'd like to see the babies. Snows as babies look totally different to normal albinos.
Yeah.
There is a precedent out there for all that kind of stuff. And if you follow that, you won't get the questioning.
Yeah.
I saw that and I just saw lots and lots of questions.
Yep.
And I just know when I proved out snows, I didn't get one question because you've got
it's so obvious.
Clutches. Wayne's snows. I've seen all Wayne's clutches. Seen Dave Evans' snows. Can't argue with it. It's there. There you go. Wayne's clutch of snows. He's got his moon glows, his snows, his exanthics, everything. It's like, there you go. The snows. Perfect, Wayne. Thank you very much. Same with Dave Evans' snows. There you go. They're all there. And I'd like to think I thought that was the same with myself because I never got questioned on it. And you can always tell by the questions. Yep. It's not that they're not valid. It's just that, hang on, we're missing information here. Can you show us? And I think that's what that stuff boils down to,
And I think if you have all of that information ready to rock and roll, and it's not just a picture of a snake and calling it. I mean, and I'm not criticizing anybody. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but that's when the questions arise. That's when the questions arise, and then the questions need to be answered because if you're sharing it to an audience, something shared to an audience, unless the audience validates it, then it's not valid, is it? Because it's that audience that you're pitching to, So that snow thing, it's like, well, a snow is clearly pink when it's born, when an albino is clearly showing all the yellows and oranges when it's born.
Yeah.
And
that can make or break a project as well. Like you don't want people to question your results.
Well, it'll hurt you down the track at point of sale, won't it?
Yeah.
And people don't just do things for money. But at some point you're going to pass on some of those animals, so needs to stand up.
Yeah.
All the carpet stuff stands up, doesn't it? And was done well.
Yeah. So, I mean, but Simon Stone had documents on documents and articles on articles of how he got there, and showed the hits and the results, and it's far more intricate. It's a far more intricate process than people would like to admit. Like it's not just you don't just throw a photo up and that answers all the questions that you'll have. You sort of want to avoid the millions of questions, and the ideal situation is you make your post and people go, okay, we can see we can see that.
Yeah, the picture needs to surpass the text.
Yeah.
And that it's that old phrase, isn't it? A picture paints 1,000 words. In reality, you shouldn't have to put any text with it. If you put the picture up and it doesn't need any writing, well, then you've achieved your goal. And that's the way it actually works. Yeah. If you can ask that question of what you're posting, does it need text? If it doesn't, then you've hit the nail on the head. I know it gets a bit more complex when it gets to triple and quadruple, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, majority, quite a few people stuck with us through tonight's show. It is a Sunday night. Thank you for coming on, Joe. It's always good to have a chat with you about these things. What have you got? What have you got planned for tomorrow?
Oh, just what is it tomorrow? Monday. Yeah, just cleaning out animals. I've got some animals to freight on Tuesday, so my life is all about cleaning and feeding. I'm a lavatory attendant to all my animals, basically.
Tell me, have you found that the economy is good for reptiles at the moment?
I think it's had a sweet spot since COVID. I think people are looking to build their castle, aren't they? Stay home and do some stuff from home. And I think there's a lot of industries that have reported that, whether it's home improvement or just anything that you can do in and around the house. I think there's been an increase in that, and the collection of pets and the breeding of pets certainly falls under that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And the flights are all back to normal now. I haven't done a freight running. I don't do that.
Yeah, the flights are there. There's just another cog in the system. You've got to use a pet freight mob to get it done, but you can still get your animals from A to B.
Yeah, I heard that from a friend the other day. He said, they don't do it's still, you still have to drop it off, but you have to go through a middleman. I mean, I just don't understand the system sometimes in this, Just overcomplicate something that's so straightforward,
Yeah. So, frustrating, but that is what it is.
Yeah, we just have to roll with it and just accept it and just make the best of it, You can't help. Doesn't help arguing the whole time and complaining about it. No?
I'm not answering that, Adam. You take COVID away, then I'll be down.
Can you imagine if you come down here and you get stuck down here? Oh my God! Yeah. Suddenly a 2 or 3 week period.
Adam wants concrete answers for something I can't give him concrete answers for.
So there seems to be a few known faces watching the show tonight. But Joe, I just wanted to say thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for the sponsor of tonight's show, Zoom Australia, as well. I think I might. They did offer. They did give us a. They did supply us with a lizard star, like a blue tongue lizard starter pack for tonight. And I'll come up with a little with an idea of or maybe we can put our minds together and come up with a question or a competition maybe this week that we can post and see if people can remember. They have to watch the show to come up with the answers. I think maybe, how many mutations were there? Five base morphs and four. How many base?
I'm working with 7. I think that's the way I like to say, because I don't want to say that there's 7 only and what other people may be working on, but I'm working with 7 proven mutations in syncoides.
Don't say them. So what we'll do is, this week I'll make a post on wherever we've had that Joe will post make a post on his page. We'll run it on your page. And we'll share it across to ZoomEd Australia's page or whatever.
We'll do a giveaway on something, yeah.
We'll do it's a ZoomEd blue tongue starter kit. We'll say what's in the prize, and what we'll do is you can ask them. They need to name the 7. The first person that mentions the 7 mutations that you're working with gets the prize. How does that sound?
Yeah.
Or we'll work it out. We'll work it out.
We'll
post it on the. It might just be too obvious. We'll come with a catch. We'll do a catch them out question. So, but thanks a lot for coming on tonight, Joe. It was a pleasure.
You're welcome. Thanks for all the questions, guys.
Look. Yeah. Now they've already. Yeah, okay. They said 7, but they don't know. They need to mention them. The names of the mutations. So go and find out. I'm sure we might find something that they don't know about. We'll figure it out. So, but have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you guys next month. We'll come with maybe do a bearded dragon show or something like that. But I appreciate all the views, and everybody stay safe, and we'll see you on the next one. Good night.